Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive.
Yeah.
Today, we are going to Neverland, but not for the reason you might think. We're not going to be hanging out with pirates or lost boys this time.
Right.
We are going to be taking a deep dive into the psychology behind this classic tale.
Yes, exactly.
We've got some really fascinating sources to help guide us today. We're going to be looking at some excerpts from a psychological analysis of the characters and also a document titled Disney Walt Peter Pan.pdf.
Yeah, should be a good time.
So I think we all know the story of Peter Pan pretty well.
Right.
And I think it's safe to say that most of us, at some point have kind of wished that we could be a little more like Peter Pan. Eternal youth, no responsibilities, just endless fun and adventure. Sounds pretty good, right?
Yeah, sign me up.
But let's think a little bit deeper here.
Okay.
What are kind of the psychological implications of this? Of Peter's refusal to grow up?
All right. Well, the analysis that we're looking at here, it suggests that Peter's aversion to adulthood, it isn't just about, wanting to have fun and avoid responsibility. It stems from a much deeper fear, a fear of losing his sense of wonder and imagination.
Oh, wow. Okay, so it goes deeper than just not wanting to do homework and chores.
Right, exactly. It's more about his identity. He equates growing up with becoming rigid and boring and, trapped in the mundane routines of the adult world.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it's not so much that he's afraid of, responsibility itself, but more like what he sees responsibility representing to him.
Exactly.
Like the loss of this, free spirit.
Yeah, it's like a threat to his very identity, which is built around freedom and spontaneity and living in the moment.
So all those battles with Captain Hook, the constant need for excitement and danger, is that all just a way to kind of avoid confronting this deeper fear of growing up?
That's a very compelling interpretation. The analysis argues that Peter's adventures are, in a way, a form of escapism.
Oh, that's interesting.
They allow him to stay in this perpetual state of childlike wonder, where, the complexities and the demands of the adult world, they just don't exist.
I mean, that makes me think about Peter's selective memory. It's like he notoriously forgets things.
Oh, yeah.
Even, important people and events. Is this forgetfulness just like a quirky character trait?
Right.
Or could it be something a little deeper?
Well, from a psychoanalytic perspective, you could definitely argue that Peter's forgetfulness serves a purpose. By forgetting the past, he avoids the emotional weight of experiences that might challenge his Neverland fantasy.
So he's essentially like erasing anything.
Yeah.
That threatens his carefully constructed world.
Yeah, exactly.
Of eternal youth and carefree adventure.
It's like he's unconsciously protecting himself from the emotional complexities that come with maturity and, deeper connections.
Wow, this is giving me a whole new perspective on Peter Pan. He's not just a carefree spirit. He's like a complex character grappling with some pretty deep-seated anxieties.
Absolutely, and that's what makes the story so fascinating. It allows us to kind of explore these universal human fears about growing up and losing our sense of wonder and facing the inevitable challenges of adulthood.
Yes, absolutely.
And speaking of anxieties, let's shift our focus over to Peter's arch nemesis, Captain Hook.
Okay, yeah.
While Peter represents the fear of growing up, Hook kind of embodies a different type of struggle, the resentment of lost youth.
Right, yeah. He's always trying to impose all these rules and order on Neverland.
Yeah.
Which, is Peter's embodiment of unfettered childhood. It's like he's constantly trying to control something that he can never truly recapture.
Exactly. And the analysis suggests that Hook's anger and his obsession with Peter stem from his own yearning for the carefree days that he's left behind.
It's like he sees Peter as a symbol of everything he's lost.
Exactly. Innocence, freedom, spontaneity.
So their conflict isn't just like this simple battle between good and evil. It's more of a symbolic representation of these two opposing forces that we all have within us. Right. The desire to hold on to youth. And then the inevitability of aging and responsibility.
Exactly. And, Hook's physical appearance, it actually reinforces this idea.
Yeah.
He's always impeccably dressed, obsessed with his elaborate attire, strict code of conduct. He represents the rigidity and formality of the adult world, which is in direct contrast to Peter's wild, untamed spirit.
And then there's the hook itself. It's not just a weapon. It's like a powerful symbol of what he's lost. And what he so desperately wants to regain.
Absolutely. The hook can be interpreted as a representation of his lost hand, which symbolizes his lost youth and vitality.
Wow.
It's a constant reminder of his limitations, his inability to fully participate in the carefree world of Neverland.
So it's like he's trying to compensate for that loss. by grasping at power and control, trying to kind of impose his will on a world that just inherently rejects those constraints.
Yeah, that's a great observation. And it's ultimately what leads to his downfall. His obsession with control blinds him to the true beauty and wonder of Neverland. He's so focused on defeating Peter that he misses out on the joy and the freedom that Peter represents.
This brings up a really interesting point about how society defines what it means to be an adult. Like, there's this pressure to conform, to let go of our childlike qualities,
Right.
and embrace this more serious, responsible persona.
Yeah, and the Peter Pan story, while written over a century ago, still speaks to this societal pressure. It's fascinating how these classic tales can reflect and challenge the norms of their time and how they continue to resonate with us today.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes you wonder if there's a way to kind of reconcile these two seemingly opposing forces, the desire to hold on to youth, but also the inevitability of aging and responsibility.
Right. Is there a way to balance those?
Can we embrace the responsibilities of adulthood
Yeah.
without completely losing our sense of wonder and playfulness?
That's the million-dollar question. And it's something that Wendy, the third key player in this psychological drama, really grapples with throughout the story.
Right. Wendy, she's such a fascinating character. She's drawn to the magic of Neverland and Peter's charm. But she ultimately chooses to grow up
Yeah.
and return to the real world.
Exactly. Wendy represents the part of us that recognizes the importance of both worlds. She understands the allure of eternal youth, but she also sees the value in growing up and taking on responsibilities and contributing to society.
And there's that moment when she tries to mother the lost boys, which Peter completely rejects.
Oh, yeah.
Like, she's instinctively moving towards those nurturing aspects of adulthood, while Peter is still clinging to, his independence and his freedom.
Yes, and that clash really highlights the fundamental difference between their approaches to life. Wendy's starting to embrace the complexities of adulthood, including the challenges and the rewards of caring for others. And Peter remains fixated on his own needs and desires.
Right, so it seems like Wendy's able to find this balance that both Peter and Hook struggle with. She doesn't reject the magic of Neverland, but she also doesn't let it consume her.
Right, she integrates her experiences in Neverland into her adult life, telling stories of her adventures to her children, keeping that spirit of wonder alive in her own way.
It's like a part of her never truly left Neverland, even though she physically returned home.
Exactly.
So it's like she found a way to hold on to those childlike qualities, creativity, imagination, a sense of adventure, while still embracing the responsibilities and challenges of being a grown-up.
Precisely, and I think that's a really powerful message for all of us. It suggests that adulthood doesn't have to mean the end of magic and wonder.
Right.
It's about finding ways to integrate those elements into our adult lives, to keep that inner child alive and well.
So instead of viewing adulthood as this rigid, confining box,
Yeah.
we can see it as an opportunity to continue exploring and evolving,
Yeah.
and finding new ways to express our creativity and joy.
That's a beautiful way to put it. It's about finding that sweet spot between responsibility and freedom, maturity and playfulness.
This deep dive is really making me rethink this whole concept of growing up. It's not just about following, a predetermined path. It's about creating our own unique journey and finding what truly brings us fulfillment. It's like the Peter Pan story isn't just, this personal exploration of each character's psychology, but also a commentary on society expectations of adulthood.
Right, and that commentary can shift depending on, how we're looking at it. For example, in J.M. Barrie's original play and novel, Wendy's happy ending is going home and becoming a wife and mother.
Right.
Which was the societal ideal at the time.
Which from a modern perspective feels a little limiting.
A little, yeah. It reflects the societal norms of the early 20th century, where women's roles were mostly confined to the domestic sphere.
Right.
But it's interesting that even within those constraints, Wendy doesn't completely lose her adventurous spirit.
Yeah, she keeps telling those stories of Neverland to her children, keeping that spark of imagination alive, like a part of her never really left.
Exactly.
Even though she physically went back home.
A part of her stayed there, and I think that's where the story subtly challenges those rigid societal expectations. It suggests that adulthood doesn't have to mean completely rejecting childhood dreams and wonder.
Right.
There's room for both.
So it's not this either situation,
Yeah.
but more about finding a way to integrate those different parts of ourselves.
Exactly. And that message, I think, resonates even more strongly today. We're always bombarded with messages about what it means to be a